Welcome to the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. What's going on, everybody? Minus here, and welcome to episode 25 of the Rewind. As always, I'm joined by my Ranger ally, as much as I can be an ally with a Ranger, Theric, as we traverse through the dark depths of Pantheon social media to bring you this week's news, community discussions, and update you on all things content creator, as we also do our best to answer all your questions about Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. So it's been a pretty crazy week as we had the Shakedown 2 testing pass, and we can't really go into a lot of details, but that was a great experience. And I think we've just been tied down. Like, we were doing Pantheon.Plus U, we had content coming out, we had testing. So Theric, how are you, my friend? Are you even ready for another week of this rewind here? What do we got?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm good. I'm good, man. I'm a little tired. It was a busy week for sure. But I got good news today that I'm going to be working from home again more than I have been. So I have more time to recover a little bit, maybe do a little bit more, Pantheon related stuff during the day, sort of when work is not flowing as much. So I'm excited about that. And I'm looking forward to doing another rewind with you, man.
Yeah. And for Pantheon's boss for Theric's boss who's listening to this show right now, I promise you he's going to work very hard from home. He's not just going to work on Pantheon content. So just ignore that first part.
I know. Yeah. My colleagues do not listen to the rewind. Maybe someday, maybe when it's
hopefully not this episode.
No, we'll be past this episode by then.
All right. Well, that is our intro. So with that, let's jump into category number 1. This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. All right, so in this section, we always talk about VR and social media, what they're talking about, what special events they have, their Twitter updates, blah, blah, blah. So let's start with the fact that they had their monthly developers stream, and they hit on 3 key points really that I would say is worth talking about from kind of an overarching standpoint. That would be really the big reveal of the Dire Lord, seeing abilities that even testers didn't get to see. The really big piece that Joppa talked on, factions, and then they kind of went into patch notes. Now, we're not going to go into a ton of details on these things because we did a lot on Pantheon.Plus U, and we were able to actually talk about our experiences. Thank you, Joppa. Thank you, VR, who just slightly lifted the NDA because they had already announced all the abilities. So we were kind of able to talk about how we felt about it. So let's start there. We talked about the Dire Lord. Theric, I think if you're like me, this was a class you really didn't have much interest in, right?
Yeah, it wasn't on my radar. I've never really played a tank all that much. But man, oh man, it's like every time you see it a little more and it gets more and more interesting. And I have to say, I think Pantheon's going to be a game where I branch out and play classes and archetypes that I've never played before. And the Dire Lord's definitely going to be one of them.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at the tanks, for me, it went Warrior Paladin, and a distant third was Dire Lord. And I'm still really into the Warrior myself. I'm really excited to eventually see what that looks like and feel what it feels like to be that, hulking mass of plate armor. I love that as a tank. I really do. I just love that feeling. But the Dire Lord, listen, hats off to VR. Not only what you guys got to see and what we talked about on Pantheon.Plus U, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, it probably harkens back a little bit to the fact that I do really, really love tanking. Obviously I'm sticking with a rogue, and there were a lot of reasons why I decided that. And that's really what I want to play. And I've really kind of embraced that over the course of covering Pantheon for the last 2 years. But listen, hats off. I was wrong. Dire Lord's a cool class. This was probably one of my bottom before playing it. And I'll tell you, man, they nailed the whole magic caster, tank.
Yeah, they really did. This was out of the tanks. This was probably the one I liked the most because I like different takes on things. I like new twists on an old idea, right? And the thing with the Dire Lord is it's unique to Pantheon. There's never been a Dire Lord class in any other MMO that I'm aware of. I mean, we've had similar types of classes. That's not to say the Shadow Knight isn't similar, and a couple others, here and there. But Dire Lord is a signature class for Pantheon, so that's pretty cool. And we always talk about some of the other things that are unique to Pantheon, and this is a class that no other MMO has done, per se in this way. At least calling it a Dire Lord. So I was definitely looking forward to it. At the tank I would be most likely to play. And now it's 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it felt really good. Like you kind of said, that's an interesting point. And we talked a little bit about that as well, as like when Pantheon goes on to be a successful game, and notice I didn't say if, when Pantheon goes on to be a successful game, these distinct classes are going to be a big important thing, not from just a lore standpoint, but if 2 years after Pantheon's launch, it's a really popular MMORPG, and you say Dire Lord, people are going to think Pantheon, right? Because it's something unique to them. And
so it's cool that,
yeah.
Sorry, I just say it's cool that they're showing it off ahead of some of the other more traditional classes, right?
Yeah.
Get that foot out there, get that unique take on a class out there ahead of everything else. And it sort of sets the tone for your game, right?
Yeah. And somebody in the Pantheon.Plus U chat had said, and I think we read it during the episode. So honestly, guys, for more in-depth information on the Visionary Realms stream, either just watch it on their YouTube, or you can go check out Pantheon.Plus U where we broke it down. But someone on the stream said, they were really happy that, it really wasn't as much of a Shadow Knight as they thought it was going to be. Like, they were a big Shadow Knight fan, but at the same time, like the difference is in that it's so unique. It's really nothing like a Shadow Knight. People are kind of excited for that again, because new is fun, right? New is exciting. We hold on a lot to like our old like times, but most of the time new is more exciting. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. That's exactly right.
From there, like we said, they talked about factions, and I know that this was something you were into because factions tie deeply into lore, I think, right? Like if you're going to have a relationship with a group of people in the game, it's got to be tied to something. It's not just like, oh, well, you killed Burger King, so McDonald's likes you. Like, right? Like there's more to it. There's more to it than that. So like, what were your thoughts on some of the stuff they said and, some of the details they revealed about factions?
Yeah. Like you said, it's all, the names mean something, and to have a name and be able to place that name in the lore. So when I killed something and it says my faction with Black Rose Keep has gotten worse, oh, okay, now I know that. I know where Black Rose Keep is. I know the story about Black Rose Keep. I know. And when I go there, I have something to sort of consider. One of the things that I thought was really interesting last night, my favorite point maybe with regard to the whole stream, was they talked about how some NPCs will be resistant to conning. And by that, I mean like learning their faction, learning which factions they're involved with or have a good or a bad relationship with when whether you're aggressive towards them or you're not, you're friendly towards them. And they talked about how being a keeper will play a role in this. And I think that's really exciting. That's something that we didn't know before. And you and I have talked about what's the value of being a keeper, where does that play in when you're out adventuring with your groups? And I think if they tie that in with factions, that's a really fun interaction, a fun, dynamic to sort of go with. So I was super excited to hear that.
Yeah, it was really cool. And like also the whole warring factions was really neat too. I got a kick out of that. And like you had said, they were kind of like talking about this area that we haven't heard of yet, where like there was all these warring factions. Like that just sounds so cool to me to like step into this battlefield of sorts. Like that's how my visions went. I don't know if that's what's going to be like, but
really cool. It was the Vale of Azarus. And you have that map of Pantheon, which is quite old at this point, probably should be updated at some point, but we've never seen the Vale of Azarus. We don't know anything about it, but we did learn a little bit last night about it, which is pretty sweet, so just even the little tidbits of lore and things that sort of intertwine with factions are really exciting for me.
Yeah, I'm going to agree 110% there. And then patch notes, there were a lot. They gave you a lot of different bugs that were fixed. Hats off to the tester community, everybody that submitted like bugs and bug reports and suggestions. I mean, they were flooded by the teams that were there with updates and just everything. And it was just so cool to see that, because that's what the testing process is all about. And, I have it on good terms that they got through a lot of those bugs, and you could hear it when they were reading through the patch notes. So like, I mean, that says so much for VR, right? Like that, they were faced with, imagine you're running a test and you just open up bug reports and you just get I mean, I can't even imagine how many thousands of things they got. They had to get tons. I don't know how many people are submitting. I'm sure there were people who submitted 100 themselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just really exciting to see not only were people actively helping, report these bugs and how they happen, but the VR is just bam, spot on, like hitting these bugs, hitting these patch notes like they did. That's a good sign, man. That's a good sign. It's a good sign of systems like working well to be able to fix these things quickly, and just a smart, good team. That excites me.
Yeah. And quality testers, like you said, it wouldn't mean anything if you had people who didn't know what they were doing. This is a community that is the definition of MMO veterans, right?
Yeah.
There's new people, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of people in this community that have been around the block many, many times. They know what to look for. They know how to do bug reports. And VR is like, bring it, man. Like, bring it. We will deal with them. We will get them fixed. And it's great stuff. So
that's a good
very
point.
Good sign.
They want it. Give us more. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So again, if you guys want to learn more about what was discussed on the stream, you can go to Visionary Realms YouTube channel and check it out there, or you can check out Pantheon.Plus, which will go live. It went live Saturday night on our YouTube. Or Friday night, actually. So you'll be able to check that out. So there's a lot of different ways you can interact with more details on the content. We're not going to, spend the whole rewind talking about stuff we've already talked about. So go check that out. Moving on to Visionary Realms on Twitter. This is something we do every week. I actually enjoy this. I got to be honest with you. I enjoy us breaking it down more than I had enjoyed the Twitter just on its own. I always kind of joked about some of the topics, but when we talk about them in this open setting, we read people's responses. I really like what they do on Twitter now. It's just now that we're interacting with him more.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's pretty fun. I love the responses. So
I preface that because this question, I think probably some people weren't into, but Theric, this is a big one for me. This is
Funny you should say that.
It's a really big question for me. So hot topic, how do you use your mouse when you play an MMORPG? So let's go ahead through some of the comments we have here. I'm going to start it with Bazgrim. He said, interesting question. I mostly just use it to move the camera. Although I have a Naga, so the side buttons are handy to target group members or use abilities. Occasionally, I'll hold down both mouse buttons to run if I need to eat or drink with the other hand. So, interesting take.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, holding down both mouse buttons that's exactly what I do too. If I need to get a drink of water or something, I'm like one-handing it.
Can't stop.
That's
playing.
right. Can't stop moving.
That's the best part about MMORPGs. We can't even stop playing to take a drink. Nathan Napalm says 12 keys. I use my thumb to slap out all my abilities. My mouse is where all my decisions are made. I can relate a lot to what he's saying there.
Interesting.
We had Jim. He said he has a Rocket Cane 122.
I don't even know what that is.
It's I'm guessing it's some kind of mouse. He says
sounds like a weapon of some sort.
It's a sword. He uses a sword. I use it mainly to point and click. But once the monk class is in the game, I'll program it for one or two of the side buttons to auto attack and the other to fiend death. This is a man who likes to have his fiend death readily available.
Yeah, he's got his monk mouse. It sounds like it's a monk. It's like a mouse with like a little cloak on it or something.
Yeah, there you go. JJ Paderia says, I didn't say it right, did I?
Nope.
Man.
JJ got us again.
JJ Piedra says, if the function allows, I use it to move my character by holding down both mouth buttons. I also bind some oh crap abilities to my extra buttons. Okay.
Yep.
Chobin Hood says, I'm not going to lie. I'm super casual. Nothing wrong with that. Super casual is fine. He says he hasn't trained himself to do anything other than left click or right click. He's like, I don't even cast spells with my number keys. I just click on the gems in the slots. It makes healing very stressful when I have to change targets in a crowd, and he even laughed a little bit at himself. So that's great. Yeah. And I have a little story about that. So don't worry, Chobin. You're not alone. Yeah. Dave Pryor says mouse button shortcuts are heavily integrated into my playstyle. Cooldowns are the only thing on my keyboard typically, which is really interesting. It reduces the chance of accidental clicks. I enjoy the setup process as well. It is quite satisfying getting it perfect. 10 plus assignments is pretty normal to me. So
wow, 10 plus assignments, man.
Yeah.
How do you remember all those? Like, I can't remember anything anymore. I can barely remember, I'll talk about it in a bit, but man, oh man, that guy's got like mega brain on him.
Yeah. I'll go into some detail on that too. So I'll leave it for the end here. Dr. Sinister says, I use it for what works best. I prefer the keyboard as much as I can. Sometimes you need some abilities. Current mouse has 7 buttons in a map. On the extra buttons on the thumb. Movement, again, I'd rather use the keyboard solely But what works best will do in a pinch. So another guy who's kind of keyboard driven.
Yeah.
So Arkham Cleric says, I guess the too long didn't read is a lot of stuff. He says, when I switched to the Razer Naga years ago, I had literally everything from using the main action bar to some of the sidebar items. And he says that usage orients around his various mouse button layouts. So he sort of has his own layout that he kind of ties into each game. Cold Applesauce, his name is Earth is on Fire, but he's at Cold Applesauce. And that's what he will be referred to as by me.
When we were in the chat on one of the previous episodes, when we talked about cold applesauce, somebody in the chat didn't know what applesauce was. They were from another country where applesauce isn't a thing. And somebody described it as pre-chewed apples. I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, yes, that's exactly what applesauce is.
Pre-chewed apples. That makes me really look at applesauce different. But I have applesauce in the fridge. After we record this, I'm going to go eat some. He says mouse is versatile, used for camera, hot bind keys, and usually clicking on abilities. So he clicks and he hot key binds and clicks. Andre Labont says WASD plus mouse equals game on. And he even says, I don't mind using a controller. I don't mind using a controller either.
Not for an MMO. Not for an MMO.
Final Fantasy 14, I played strictly with a controller, and Blade and Soul, I played strictly with a controller.
I should try that, actually. I should try Final Fantasy 14 with a controller because I've got it hooked up. It's just, that's interesting.
It's going to be rough for you, though, because I started with a controller.
Yeah.
It's nice when it works, but Blade and Soul, I hurt myself playing Blade and Soul on a controller because my class was this like combination of left, right trigger, like left, right, left, right. Like it was this weird, crazy combo. And I just got so good at it. Like it was I just did it. And eventually my pointer fingers hurt. And I had to start using my middle finger on my left trigger because I literally injured myself from how much I was like hardcore in that game for a while. So
wow. Well, that's been tense.
How about that?
Man.
Yeah. Injury. MMORPG injuries. Rasper Helpdesk says, and this is really cool. I'm really happy he shared this with us. He said, due to dystonia, I can only use my right hand. So with a Razer mouse, I have a dozen buttons on the side mapped to various things. He said 1 through 6 is typically his actions. 5 is jump. 7 is inventory. 9 is map. 8 is forward. And then 10 and 12 strafe left and right. And 11 is backwards. And then he uses his mouse wheel to target closest. I love that he shared that. And I
pretty
love,
incredible.
Yeah, it's like Rasper, thank you so much. I don't know if we featured you on the Rewind before, but honestly, thank you for sharing that. It's really cool to hear how you're making it work for you. And it's funny because, I'm going to talk a little bit because I have a 12 button mouse and, he is actually more agile on his mouse than I am because like I can only use 1 through 6. So we'll talk more about that, but honestly, Rasper, like, thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. And like, I can see you playing now because like I have that style mouse and it's really cool. Like I never thought of using some of those buttons to move. And to like think about you like adapting to that so you can be a kick-ass player in MMORPGs is freaking awesome, man. So hats off to you. It's really cool.
Man. Very
really
cool.
Rousey, his @ is good too. Going ham bacon. I like that.
Going ham bacon.
Going ham bacon. I think the mouse plays one of the biggest roles in first impressions. I use it to pick items off the ground, check a stats, look around. The mouse is my hand, fingers, and eyes. It needs to feel like it. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Free Spirit with a hand up says mouse clicker here. He says, I use the mouse for everything except movement. Tried using high key binds and just felt weird trying to commit to muscle memory. Play however you're most comfortable, I say. 100%, Free Spirit, you're not the only one. A couple other people said they use their mouse for clicking. No problems there, man. And then Dan also shared something cool. He said left mouse hand mouser for the win. So he said right hand on the 10 keypad, where he's rerouted for forward, back, left, right, and all his instance hots and such. He's seen right-handed mousers, and that way his way is far more comfortable and usable. It's interesting. Like imagine, like look at your keyboard and mouse right now, and imagine you had to switch. Like your right hand is closest to that numpad, right? Like you're not going to use WASD, so he's configured that. And it's funny because like that mouse pad kind of ties in, or the numpad is kind of ties into what I use on my left hand. So so I'm going to go into that now. So personally, I was a clicker until the end of WoD in World of Warcraft. So that was the Warlords of Draenor. I was actually a clicker completely, and I was a strong player. Haya, who I had met in Blade and Soul, he never played WoW. So we joined WoW together and he's like, "You're a clicker?" And he proceeded to rag on me until I kind of, honestly, he forced me to change. He's like, "So it's kind of half true, I guess, but it did take me a really long time to get used to hotkeys." And some of the people up top said that. In fact, so using the keyboard, I struggle so mightily in keeping my hand in place when reaching. I don't know why, man. Like if I keep myself on WASD and I have to reach to like 6, I have to pick my whole hand up. It doesn't feel comfortable to just reach without looking. So what happens, I pick my hand up to hit and then I go back and I don't always land on WASD. So like I actually lose my place a ton on the keyboard. Like I can type like a machine. I can sit here looking at the screen. I have really fast typing. But when it comes to reaching for ability keys and stuff, like I really struggle on my keyboard. Like I can't actively play looking at the screen and keep my hand in the right position. So what I did is I went and bought one of the Razer Tataruses. So my mouse is a Corsair Scimitar. It's my favorite mouse. Anybody out there looking for an MMO mouse, I highly recommend it if you want a lot of buttons. I do not recommend the Logitech one. I actually started with the Logitech MMO mouse. The buttons on the side are really clunky. But the Razer Scimitar, you can move the entire 12 button key set up and down the side of the mouse. So you can put the 12 buttons in a comfortable spot for your thumb, which is just huge for me. And the way that they're kind of broken up and like tilted, you kind of can feel where you are and understand where you are. But I love this mouse. I've actually gone through one of them already. This is my second one. I just can't talk enough about it. So I have my 12 buttons on my mouse on the side. And then I have what's called a Tatarus. And this Tatarus has 19 buttons. It's 19 keys.
Oh my God.
So imagine you just took 19 keys out of the middle of your keyboard and you just had them all together. So essentially the middle, like 8, 12, 13, 14 is WASD, right? But now because there's all these other buttons around and below it, similar to what would be on my keyboard, it just keeps me in a smaller location and I'm not reaching for as much. And then on my thumb, I have a stick. So the stick I actually programmed to where like if I press it forward, that'll jump. If I pull it back, right, that will like shift modify. So I've really just used the Tatarus to be like alt modifiers by my thumb. There's a little trigger below it that's a control modifier. And then I kind of just use all the buttons on the Tatarus plus like everything on my mouse. And I use usually, like I said, on my mouse, like I use 6 buttons on the side because it's kind of difficult for me to reach back to like the 9 through 12. So, but the front 6 with an alt modifier is 12 buttons, right? And then you throw a control modifier in, now you're at 18 buttons. So a lot of it on my mouse, I can just do, which is kind of cool. The only other thing I'd say is like, you know, the tab targeting on my mouse is typically my click in of my mouse wheel. And then like I'm a spaz with my camera with the mouse. Like when we were playing, remember like when I was like, okay, Theric, you know, turn your camera so you're looking over here, look behind us. I'm going to spin. Like I'm really like when I'm playing, the way my character looking is typically never the way my camera is. So I'm just constantly moving around. So
really, that's so interesting.
So again, it's pretty intense, like the insanity of all this stuff. But
it is very intense, man. It is intense. You're playing chess, man. I'm over here playing checkers with my mouse. Like I am very, very basic when it comes to this stuff. And it's funny with this question you talked about at the beginning. You know, I kind of thought it was a silly question, to be honest. Like I kind of dismissed it, and I was like, I don't think there's much to say about this. I mean, outside of using, you know, mouse look and which buttons you assign your skills to, you know, what more is there to it than that? And I hear these responses and then I hear your story and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm like rubbing 6 together to create fire and you're got a Tesla going on over there, you know, like there's so much more to it. So for me, I'm like, I move around with WASD. I use the mouse look, you know, for to look around and then interacting with stuff, you know, whatever. That's it. I've got a 5-button Razer mouse that I really like. I've had it for a long time and I like the weight of it. I like how it feels. I'm definitely not going to be upgrading to like a crazy scheme like yours, but the replies were interesting. One of the things that I noticed, Dan, who talked about being left-handed, I'm left-handed as well, but I've always done everything right-handed, right? So I think it's so cool that he's, you know, sort of managed to, make the setup work for him as a left-handed person.
You just said the quote. You just said the quote. I'm left-handed, but I've always done things right-handed. That would mean that you're right-handed.
Well, no, it means I've trained myself to do things right-handed. I play guitar with a regular type of guitar. I mouse with my right hand, but I'm strongly left-handed as well, and in everything else. So it's funny, hearing these stories. I definitely learned a lot about how people use a mouse for an MMO, and it's interesting. So yeah, good stuff, man.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's funny how such a small topic can like become this big of a topic, and it's really cool because that's like so community, and just hearing like how different people play is insane. But yeah, I'll tell you what I suck at though. If we have to group chat or talk, I literally have to take both my hands. So I might like imagine I'm like flying a plane. I have my left hand on a Tataris. I have my right hand on a mouse. Like I'm spread out. My keyboard's in the middle of them. So like I'm like my arms are out, shoulders spread out, and I'm doing this like flying a plane. When I got to type, I have to take both hands off and move into the keyboard that's in the middle. And like that's why I am so like, hey guys, want to get in voice? Do you want to get in voice?
that plane's going down, man.
Yeah, I really hate having to type because I have to pull off my main controls to type. So
funny, yeah. There you go.
I need to get like a voice to text device.
Oh man. You'll be a cyborg by the time this thing's all done and said and done.
Let's go to the next question here. They said with PA Shakeout 1 and 2 behind us, we now sift through all the amazing feedback and bug reports to help us with PA 5. What's the first thing you look for when testing a game or in early testing phases like pre-alpha? So Nathaniel James says the first thing is the overall experience testers had and the testers' feedback. That'll point you in the direction of the issues they've experienced. Did the experience that the developer intend actually come to fruition? Where are the new mechanics tested? Where were they tested enough? How did it feel? Streak says, I mostly test my patience while I wait for alpha. But if I was in pre-alpha, then I would like to look for the game-breaking bugs, crashes, getting stuck or falling through the world, as well as testing some of the core mechanics to feel fluent and fun. Rykoth says, is there progress? And each time there's a testing phase, can I see, feel, and note that there's a legitimate progress being made in the game? I think for those of us that back the game, but maybe aren't the best testers, it's important for us to feel like things are improving. So that was a really good point.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Patrick Collins says, first thing, does it load properly? Can't play with the blue screen of death. Personally, the next thing would be the UI, where the on-screen buttons or controls, the keyboard controls, and they have to be function as designed. So yeah, pretty good. Talon Manley.
It's a crazy good name. Talon Manley.
Yeah. With ad hoc exploratory testing in the game like this, the first thing checked is basic functionality. Movement, abilities, consumables, targeting, instances, etc. The most basic things usually break first. Once that's all tested, I'll move on to more complex systems. Nimacry says, I look for tooltips and ability interaction. Numbers can be tuned, drop rates can be tuned, but being able to understand what my abilities do and how they play and interact with each other is crucial. I like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, Cotter Stormhold says movement of the character. And finally, Mike says mob behaviors.
There you go.
Yeah, so for me, it sort of starts before even getting into the game, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, what's the launch or download progress? Like, how is the login process? How does the game boot up? Like, if these things are clean, that's a really good start, in my opinion. If they aren't, it can become frustrating very quickly because these should just be automatic at this point. Like, there's a lot of things you can't test for, but like being able to get in the game, that should work. Yeah. So once I'm in, I sort of look at like lag and rubber banding and where like mob placement, like, is it accurate? Like if I'm attacking a mob, is it there? Are they where they say they are? Like, is positioning during combat correct? Like, am I standing inside the mob to hit it? Is it standing like inside me? Is it really awkward? Like, can I move it around? And do abilities respond to button press? Like, those are the things that are really important to me when I first get in. From there, I'm going to jump all about movement. We talked about that a little earlier, like camera, interaction, controls. Does it feel intuitive? A lot of games sometimes want to make something overly complicated for the sake of complication. Sometimes I feel like, so it's like, do the basic things tied into interacting with a group work? Is the interface clean? Is really the overlaying things that go into playing a game. Gotta be honest, that's like kind of what I look at first. So before I get into like what abilities do, how classes play, These things are what everyone should feel. And even if they don't notice it, and at that point, if they don't notice it, I think it's probably nailed. So even character creation is pretty important to me, to do like basic things that make sense, and like just getting into the game. And again, it's just, if something should feel natural, then does it, I guess. So what do you think?
Yeah. I think intuitive is probably a good way of looking at it with that. And I've said this before when we've talked about this, but I'm pretty much a novice when it comes to early testing. So I'm drawing on my recent experience with this. And I like what Patrick Collins actually said about the blue screen of death. How long has the blue screen of death been around as a longtime PC gamer, right? Like that's the number one thing. It's like drilled into our psyches as this terrible thing. And then, man, if you're still getting blue screens of death in this day and age with your games, I mean, you're sort of doing something wrong. So if you're getting those, that's definitely number one. And I'm not a technical person, so I have to rely on what the feel of a game is. Like I know it's very subjective, but does it feel like the game that they've described? Even in an early state, something should come across, whether it's even without the features that they've talked about, or even without visuals and story. When you are running around, when you are in the world, it should feel close to what that core experience of the developer, the vision of the developer is. And if there's glaring contradictions between like the tenets and the basic design, I think that's something that is so foundational that you have to really ask, like, has this testing been done? Where has somebody looked at this? Has somebody thought about this? And
that's a great point. If something feels so awkward, you're just like, why was this okay?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Like it makes you wonder about the testing. And so just consistency, I think, in the game's direction and what it feels like. So I'll leave it at that. But so I'm less technical, more of a subjective feel kind of person.
No, that's good. That's it for VR's news and notes this week. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into social media and see what the discussion is all about.
Okay, so for our community discussions, we are going to the Pantheon MMO website. Cool topic this week was brought by Baron999, and it's about spending stat points in an MMO. So before we get into what he posted, I wanted to sort of bring up a post that somebody found. A Goofy Warrior guy found a post from 2016, which sort of gives VR's views, at least at that time. And this was from Corey Lefevre, who's not on the team anymore, but he was greatly involved in sort of understanding and the vision that they had for how stat points in Pantheon are going to work. And he kind of talked about it a little bit. And what he basically said was, it was going to feel similar to EverQuest. You're going to start with a couple stat points, a couple points in stats. But by and large, after that, it's going to mostly just come from armor class and upgrades. So like your strength, your stamina, your wisdom, your dexterity, all that stuff. They're not going to get stat points at levels. You're just going to get the stuff you get off the armor and the gear that you find in the game. So that was sort of their vision. Again, this was a quote from 2016. So, who knows if that's changed. And so that's what Baron is asking in this post. He's saying, here's his post, what he asked. How many additional stat points would you see yourself spending on a frequent basis? So would you be okay to receive one spendable stat point per level? Would you prefer to gain one stat point, say every, 25% of a level? So like when you ding, it's like 4 points. Or perhaps maybe you'd like to spend more than that to really feel a difference and feel your character grow. Or on the other side of the coin, would you rather have no stat increases like the way that Corey talked about it in terms of VR's vision, and everything comes with armor and gear and that kind of stuff? So interesting question. And the responses were actually fairly aligned in terms of what people are thinking and in line with what VR is saying, but I'll go through them. So Ezreal said additional stat points beyond character creation should come from gear only. Doherty said attribute points should be as they are in early games like D&D, rare and precious. An extra point every 10 levels would be too many. Maybe a bonus point at level cap to commemorate a real milestone. Our buddy Vandrad said he said statflation, right? I mean, this is the big concern with this. I think that everybody sort of comes to is that, and like we've seen in other games like EverQuest, it ends up ruining the game when 1 point per level doesn't sound like much, but after 50 levels, that's 50 points, right? And when you're starting out with just single digits in stats, the ability to add 50 more, even after 50 levels, it's just overpowering and it makes the game unbalanced. Bam Bam said really simply, less is more. And again, that was a common theme throughout these responses.
Mhm.
Unicron said, I see myself hoping VR goes with horizontal progression model rather than a vertical progression model, because as Vandrad correctly pointed out, vertical progression leads to inflation that creates other balance problems within the game that aren't easily solved the longer the game goes on. So some of these people were talking, like some of the responses are thinking like long term, like 10 years out, 20 years out. How is this going to affect things? So it's always good to have that long view when you're talking about issues like this. Somebody else said, I do find it odd how quickly characters grow in statistical power in some games. I think would be much more I would be much more invested in the system if stats only came from items and buffs and not from extra points every level or so. Venict said, from what I've seen, every stat point is going to be huge. It's why they're sticking with the lower numbers, and stats are going to be big, even if it's just 1 point. Just like AC, every point is noticeable, so there shouldn't be a need for extra points. The gear you farm, find, or acquire from any source is going to be very impactful, which makes it even more exciting and more often in my mind of getting an upgrade. Chenzim said, I would like to see player-based stats be capped depending on race class. He has a kind of an interesting take on this. He goes a little bit of a different direction. He compares it to being like so he said, if I was a sprinter that trained, I would gain strength and speed above that of an average person, but I would also max out. So no matter how much training I did, there would be a point where I can't get any better. So if you want to travel faster at that point, then you get on a bike. So it's like, that's your gear. Like that's your gear upgrade is your bike as you're a sprinter. It kind of makes sense if you think about it like that. And then he just finishes by saying, that's how I see stats in the game. Your physical, your mental conditioning should have a maximum value. From there, only improved by external factors.
That's a good point. That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah, it's a good sort of visual description that I think you can sort of understand quite clearly. Counterfletch said, I'd like to see either no added stats or a very slow rate. Bolda said, you don't need to increase stats for the character. It should be gear-based. But as you level, the calculation that happens on total stats to produce your HP and mana should increase. So like a stat, one stat point at level 1 is not the same as one stat point at level 50. So he's sort of like scaling it up.
It's funny because a lot of people don't want to increase stats because they don't want these complicated numbers. I feel like that adds a lot more complication than just making a bigger number.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
It's a good point though, because that's what I'm going to be harping on here in a minute. So.
Okay, cool. So Disposalist said, in concept, I'd like to see us having some control in defining our core attributes somewhat. For our characteristics to improve as we gain experience, training would make sense, and to choose how we are shaped by our experiences and training would feel pretty good. I'm sure VR could design around that concept, but perhaps they want to make it all about the gear and not enable characters to progress their stats just by grinding trash monsters and leveling up. And then lastly, Darch said, I'd honestly prefer something similar to like 5th edition D&D, where you get a choice of like a feat or something like that at 5 times, like on average, through 20 levels of the game. So a lot of interesting ideas here. And I kind of went 2 ways on this. I actually had something else typed up first, and then I changed my mind about it. I was sort of in line with what everybody was saying about no stats, just gear and that kind of thing, because I think it's important that in an MMO, you're chasing gear, right? And chasing levels is fine, but if you can do that in lieu of improving yourself by not going after gear, I think that's a problem. So I kind of changed my mind though. I said, like I like building characters in single player RPGs. I like trying to make unique and kind of interesting stuff like archetypes and that kind of stuff. And with that in mind, if we got a couple points every 10 levels, and let's say the level cap's 50, like that might work. Like think about how impactful they are. It could allow me to really customize my character and without negating the impact of gear stats and AC. I definitely think like I said, chasing loot's important, but I also think that I want that little bit of signature ability to create a custom character. And we also have to take into account the mastery system here, right? They talk about, getting points distributed into your mastery system, having to find points. And I think that's really where they have taken this idea of getting stat points when you level and shifted it over to the mastery system, which is also cool and also does what I'm talking about in terms of character customization. So if that's how they do it, I have no problem spending my time, looking for those points out in the world rather than just getting them automatically when I level up. And again, like I said, if you did get a couple every 10 levels, so like if the level cap's 50, then you've got, you're keeping it under control. So sort of a long-winded way of saying yes, but no at the same time. So what about you, man? What do you think? How do you want to get stats here?
Yeah, I want stats. So the one point I started speaking up on is where he said, maybe you don't get stats, but 1 is bigger at 50 because there's going to be a multiplier by your level. That's too complicated. It's really no less complicated than just having big numbers and trying to figure out like where it's at. So you brought up something really important, character customization. If we don't get any stats, then the only thing we can do to customize our characters is gear. And if there's certain gear that's really good, a lot of us are going to be exactly the same. So there's a very interesting counterpoint in saying if we don't get to put some stats in that are meaningful, then we're not getting to really build our character like to how we would want to play sometimes. So I think that you brought up a great point about character customization that I think that these points are very important for. And then the second point of it that I would tie in to what he was saying is that if I'm a naked level 50, I shouldn't be as vulnerable as being a naked level 1. Like I just shouldn't be. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. If you're a warrior and you don't have any armor on, you're still a badass if you're a level 50 warrior. And you should be able to pick up those lower level mobs with your hands if you have to and beat them to death. So I think that, we need points because there has to be a base character customization, like you said. And I don't think that a naked 50 and naked 1 should be similar in any way, shape, or form. So that's kind of my two mentalities on it, that hopefully that adds like a different level of thought maybe for some of the people who are against stats. But I would feel awful if you're level 50 and you can't get past level 1 mobs.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're running around with none of your gear and you're getting taken out by rats and snakes and stuff like that at level 50. So it would make a lot of sense. And there is sort of a natural, it's just common sense that as you grow higher in level, your natural attributes increase, right? There's sort of a common sense approach to it there. So yeah, but it was a really interesting discussion. I didn't include all the responses as I usually do. I can't include them all for time, but some people did talk. There was a lot of math conversation. There was a lot of, like you were talking about, scaling with as you level up the point, meaning more. But really interesting stuff. So so from there, we'll move on to our introductions for this week. We had 3 new folks come by and say hi. I'll start with Casarax. He says, howdy, Legacy of Ages guild member that will likely main a Scar Shaman. Classic WoW, Diablo, and RuneScape player. Regretfully was never part of the EQ
love
scene.
That he put Diablo in there.
Yeah. No, we don't get a lot of the Diablo, the old Diablo fans, which we are definitely both part of. He says, regretfully never part of the EQ scene, but I happened to find mention of this game in upcoming MMOs, and I'm excited for what VR is brewing. I've played all types of roles during my gaming experience, so all the support, tank, healer, DPS, that kind of stuff. Find myself gravitating towards keeping these green bars in pristine condition. So I'm guessing he's talking about a healer there. Yeah. Did my time as a super hardcore raider. Definitely looking forward to a more immersive, relaxed game atmosphere. If you see me in game, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask if you need help. So
it's funny. He like how he said there, like he was a hardcore raider looking for more immersive. I've said that how many times, like when we're talking.
Yeah.
But then when we were playing, who was the first guy that got upset that we weren't killing and grinding and getting gear? It's gonna be tough to fight that off, man. It's gonna be tough.
I've got a plan. I'm working on something. I've got a training regimen for you that I'm working on. I haven't rolled it out yet.
Is it called bring a bag of Cheerios with you? Like mine is here. Eat these Cheerios. You're getting upset.
Maybe now that you mentioned it, maybe that'll help. I'll do something with that. That's what it takes.
I still want to be relaxed and immersive, and I think I can do it, but I love gear. I love gear.
I believe you. No, we're going to work together. You're going to make me more competitive, and I'm going to chill you the heck out.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah. Next up was Shuj. He said, I'm a new pledge. I'm looking to rekindle some of that old school EQ goodness or something like it. Tried Ultima Online back in the day. Couldn't get into it. But then this game called EverQuest pulled me in around the time of Kunark came out. Left around, came back during Velius. He says, during EQ, I also dabbled in Anarchy Online for a while and enjoyed that for what it was. Later moved into WoW, EQ2, dabbled in both. Since then, he's laid off MMOs in general, focused on work and his well-being, and he's looking forward to this game so he can demolish all his free time in the future. He's glad to have found the game, he's sad about Brad, and he hopes this turns into a regular MMO of choice for the future. And then lastly,
by the
Demris.
way, real quick with what he said there, Kunark was the best. I love Kunark.
Was Awesome. Yeah. I have a lot of fond memories of Kunark. Carnor's Castle, man. That was Kunark, right? Or was that Velius? That was Kunark.
Yeah, I think it was Kunark. Yeah. I don't want to get into a huge EQ, but he put about coming in and doing Kunark, and like all the rest were okay that I played in. I think I played up to Plains of Power, and they were okay, but there was nothing like Kunark when that hit. I spent so much time even in Kern's Tower, man. Like, I love Kunark. City of Mist. Oh.
City of Mist. Oh, it's good stuff. I played up to Velius. I quit after Velius. So, yeah. Oh, man, memories. Anyway, Demarest, the last one. He says, hey, everyone. I wanted to introduce myself. I played mostly EQ back in the heyday. Discovered Project 1999 a while back. Been having some fun with it. Played a little bit of WoW and Dark Age of Camelot. Never got into the raiding scene. I'm definitely not opposed to it, though. I was so happy stumbling upon Pantheon. I remember hearing about them when they did their crowdfunding, but I missed the cutoff. I'm so glad I rediscovered it, and seeing how far they've come is amazing. I'm 100% hooked already. So awesome. Cool. And go over and stop in on the forums, man. Say hi to these the new folks here, and I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Welcome to the community.
Definitely. And then lastly, I just want to do a quick shout out to a fan project that we say longtime supporter for a lot of people in the community, and but nobody really is a longtime supporter as 187. We talked about him a couple of episodes ago. I think you did your Bard's song about 187.
Yeah,
he did a video. I don't know if you saw this or not. Yep. It is crazy good. Did you see it?
Yeah, I retweeted it out. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like a tribute to Pantheon, and it's like really well done. It's got like this epic feel to it and epic music, and I just gives you all the feels, right? Gives you a little bit of Pantheon juice. So
and it's watch it. It's sweet. It's right to the point. It's like you said, epic. Definitely fun.
Yeah. So there's a link in the description and in the show notes as well. So definitely go give that a check out. And that's it for this week's community discussions.
Let's talk content creator updates and new additions to Pantheon.Plus. Awesome. So let's jump in on Pantheon.Plus, what's going on with content creators, what we're working on. So Basgrim had a watch party for the developer stream. So you can find that on his Twitch page, and I'm sure it's probably up on his YouTube channel by now. And it's cool because like you can kind of see his live reaction to some of the stuff he's seeing, and he'll chat with the chat. So it's kind of like just real reaction. So it's neat to watch. It's wow, he's watching the stream. And then they'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that happened. So you check that out post haste if you haven't already. And Pantheon.Plus, so Drac continued his amazing community videos, adding 2 more community member profiles. He covered Greyjack and Styren. So check out their profiles to learn more about what they want to expect out of Pantheon and what you think they may be in Pantheon, so you can meet up with them and you get to hear some of their MMORPG stories. So if you want one of these set up for yourself, contact Drac on Twitter or Discord and get yourself set up. I love these, man. I love them so much. They tie. And don't get me wrong, I loved his old blogs too, but I don't know. I'm a big video guy, right? So like, I just love watching these, and it ties so much into the hashtag community matters. That's why we're here. Like that hashtag is why Pantheon.Plus exists. Like without that, we wouldn't be here. So these videos they're awesome. I love it. I love his idea. I love his production. I love that he interviews them. Like people are lining up to interview him with him, and it's so cool.
Yeah, I know. People are lining up. You're right. I know he's busy. He's always busy, and he's cranking these things out. So I can't wait to see the next one.
Yeah, and I can't even get in. Like I'm trying to get a -1 going here. I'm like waiting in line. Man, you think you know a guy, and then he puts you in line. Yeah,
you think you might have some some sway with him, but I guess not. I don't know.
I'm a nobody. So much like Baz, we also had some content around the developer stream as we followed up with episode 45. This is me and you. Talking about what we saw in the dev stream in a lot more detail. Joppa allowed us to go into more detail about how we played with some of those abilities that we were able to test. So that was really cool. So thank you to VR again for lifting the NDA in a very slight way for us there. Please remember, don't just go running off doing that to any testers out there. Please get permission before you do. Please. But yeah, it's kind of weird. Like when we're like, oh, we only had 2 videos and a rewind after like the crazy weeks that we've had.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest.
Sometimes less is more.
Yeah, it was a nice welcome break to only put out 2 videos from us and then 2 from Drac. So
yeah, right.
whatever that's worth. Yeah. So what's being worked on? So Wednesday night, we actually pushed through our updated front page. It was kind of unexpected, but Poirot just broke through on it, and we were testing stuff, and I was logged into the admin profile and trying to break things, and we did find some errors, but we were able to get them all done that night. And each was like, let's push it out. So I think personally that the flow and overall usability of the site like increases tenfold. You'll see a trending section at the top of the screen. So you'll see the headline at the top. That's like news that we try to keep up on. Bear with us. We're still getting that going. But then you're going to see the most upvoted media pieces, whether, once we have articles, but right now it's videos over the last 30 days. So if you're a member of the site, log in, hit those thumbs up on stuff you really like, because you're actually going to make that keep a place for up to 30 days in the trending section. So if there's something you really like, so people will get comments on it and they can talk and you can kind of make it part of the community, just hit that thumbs up. It's really cool. The biggest thing there is we also added the Pantheon.Plus wall. So you'll see basically the way the page works is headline, trending, the 5 most recent articles, then you'll see the Pantheon.Plus wall. And what this is if you tweet out hashtag Pantheon.Plus on any images or videos, you'll be able to have it shown on that wall. So we're just encouraging any people to post, their gaming sessions, Pantheon creations, whatever you want to put up, hashtag Pantheon.Plus, and we can throw it up on that wall so people can see it. Not only will you be able to see it on the website, we also have it as part of Pantheon.Plus U. So you'll see your picture come up or your gaming experience and your quotes and your Pantheon stuff. So it's just another cool way to be interactive with the website and our live streams so we can keep the community in focus. And that's, again, another Drac project. Like, if these community things he does are awesome. So check that out. And we've talked about article implementation for about 4 to 5 months. That's how long it's been. I feel horrible because I said we were close like probably 3 months ago. It's been long. It's a huge step in this process, though, is to get the page laid out like this, because articles are just going to go right in line with the videos, right in line with trending. So it's a big step. And remember, we're programming all this from the ground up. We're not just using pre-programmed stuff. We're not using WordPress plugins. We're doing this because the articles system is going to tie into so much more with what we have planned in the future. So we wanted to make sure it really works well. So I still don't have a timetable. I wish I did, but they are really progressing strong. And that's why we wanted to push the front page update out. So we've also heard of a few people having issues making an account. It's weird. You get some kind of error about unapproved characters. So for some reason, if you get that and you're not using unapproved characters, just using numbers and letters, we have on our Discord, there's a website feedback channel. Just jump in there, post in there, or submit like a support email in the link in the menu system on the website. Either one of those, and we'll get that fixed and figure that out. We're trying to figure out why that's happening. We're not sure right now. So other things from us, it's a somber moment, but I really wanted to talk about this because I think a lot of people may avoid doing it, and I don't want to do that. I want to give a shout out to the team at Valere. So they did make a difficult announcement last week, and due to personal reasons that are pretty heavy, their development is currently on hold. I hate hearing this, we can understand how hard it is to develop a game like Valere with only 2 people. We've said that a lot, right, Derek? So
yeah. It's definitely it's a tough one to take because we've had great experiences with them, both directly as a one-on-one with them as people and as well as playing the game, and it was sad to see that project get put on hold. So definitely not what you want to see, but also reality of the situation, right? So
yeah, it is. And I just want to make sure people know, like, it was in early pre-alpha. We were helping them test. We were doing some streams and showing off. I don't regret a second of that. Like, these are good human beings who were trying to put their dream together with 2 people, and they did some damn good stuff for a game that early in. And, they're also still continuing some work. They've designed some very strong Unity tools. So they're kind of going back and just working on building tools and stuff like that. And it doesn't mean that Valere is dead. I want to make sure that if anybody leaves with anything, I never regretted being a part of this. These guys were awesome. And hyping up the game and showing off videos and convincing people to check it out. No regret. Their hearts were in this properly. They always acted with extreme integrity. And if Valere picks back up, you can rest assured that we will be there to support them. So Good luck
100%.
good luck to the Quasar team, and we hope we see you guys back in action soon. So,
Agreed.
and with that, let's move on. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it gets here, I just yell, mail! We're getting sued.
Okay, well, that bumper picks us all up. Now we're not feeling so somber anymore. Now we're all happy, right? So
just embarrassed.
Yeah, right. Okay, so our first question this week in the mailbox comes from JJ Piedra. He says, something that's been a staple in modern games, both on console and in the MMO realm, are achievements. If Pantheon included achievements in a non-trivial manner that challenged the player on an individual basis and gave them extra goals and new ways to do content, would you like to see that? I'll go first. And man, achievements. Oh man, achievements have come a long way. I remember when achievements were actually like determined by people who played the game. And I'm going to take a strong stance here. You might disagree with me here, and I don't know. I'm interested to see what you think about this. But you know, hearing the original like Super Mario Brothers, somebody finished it with it never dying, or jumping over the flag at the end of the level, like that was an achievement. That was cool, right?
Yeah.
But like so many things in the gaming industry, right? The idea got co-opted into design, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But what happened was they found certain ways to, you know, drive player behavior in certain directions. And it really ended up doing a lot of negative things. I don't like achievements in games generally. I think that a lot of times they're just undeserved sort of dopamine hits.
You mean you don't want to get an award for, you know, beating chapter 1?
It's like your achievement first steps. You walked forward for the first time. Congratulations. It's like, oh man. But on the other hand, sometimes they're so ridiculous. It's like, you know, you get that true hero achievement. That means like you murdered everyone in the game and you took no damage and you did it in 10 seconds. It's like, people are trying to accomplish these things, and it's giving games like value they don't deserve to have, right? So I think there's a big issue with this. I definitely am not a fan of achievements. I like I like self sort of designed achievements, and what's important to you should be in control of. Maybe I'm taking too hard of a stand, but you know, like I don't want to say anything like that in Pantheon, and I hope they don't do that. But what do you think?
Yeah, so on consoles like Xbox, I don't care at all about achievements. Not even a tiny bit. I am not a 100%er. I just play a game. I want to see the story. I beat it. I'm done. I never play it again. That's pretty much how console gaming works for me. For MMOs, I'm going to say that I mostly say that I don't care about them, but I'd be lying because in World of Warcraft, for example, it was very important for me in the guild to get the achievement every raid tier code ahead of the curve, which was your guild got a guild credited achievement for downing a raid in heroic mode before it was nerfed, and you could get the next tier of gear. So basically it was like you beat it when you were supposed to, and here is a forever date stamp that you'll have on your character that you can look back at. Yeah. I'm not someone who's going to go around trying to get like meaningless achievements, but the meaningful ones with the timestamp, it's kind of neat to go back and look at those memories, like especially if you play a game for 10 years. Be like, oh, God, it was Karazhan. I beat it in 2000, blah, blah, blah. Like it was so long ago. Like that kind of stuff is cool, but overall, I do not like achievements. So
yeah, it's a really great point. I mean, what you're saying is that the MMOs are such a bigger time commitment than a lot of single player games, right? Like you're talking about years and years playing a game. I mean, I can see why you would think achievements and why achievements might mean more. And again, it's a social game, better, more or less, and there's a certain cachet that comes with having a certain achievement. So yeah, it's a little different for MMOs. I can get behind that, but I think about these Steam games, and some people buy Steam games just for the achievements, right? Like there's a certain Steam culture about achievement
like
hunting,
getting your gamer score up or whatever.
Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, okay, so next question comes from Raphael. He says, are you planning on upgrading or building a new PC for Pantheon? I'll let you take this one first.
So mine's coming tomorrow. Wait, no, I have to remember this comes out on Sunday. So mine got here yesterday.
So you're enjoying your new PC as we speak.
It's outstanding. I found a really good deal. $1,700 after tax for an i9, 10900K. New motherboard, the case that I wanted, the cooling system I wanted. It comes with a lesser graphics card, but I'm just going to pop my 2080 Ti in that. And then I just have to, all I have to do to the machine once I swap my graphics card into it is get another 16 gigs of RAM. I'm upgrading to DDR4. I'm upgrading a 6 generations of my processor, so it's pretty old. And cooling and stuff like that, the case. So I'm really excited for that. I have wanted, and AMD fans are going to beat me up, but I have wanted the i9 since they announced them, and I'm really excited to get that. And for those of you out there that are like, oh, why are you going Intel? I'm a big Adobe user. We are content creators, so I use Premiere, I use Illustrator, I use Photoshop, I use After Effects. I use tons of Adobe, and Intel works really well with Adobe. It just does. It's Adobe is a tricky group of programs, and they delisted my processor. So what that means is when I put the new Adobe programs in, I get this error that my processor is not compatible, and I can't preview things, and exporting takes forever. So I have to use older versions of Adobe. So having this is just going to be content creation masterpiece. Don't get me wrong. My current PC can probably run every game I play in 60 frames per second. This will do a better job. But the production side, the actual content creation, is going to become so much better. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that's great, man. I've been building my own systems for a long time, and I'm going to continue to do so. My current setup I built 4 years ago now, and it's still good. I mean, I've still got a few more years, but I upgraded my video card last year. I've got the 2080 Ti in there, and it'll be good for a long time. So, have
we ever told the story that I was responsible for that? Have we told that on the rewind?
I don't think we have told that story, but yeah, you are definitely responsible for it.
We weren't even really we didn't know each other. I just posted a picture of my 2080 Ti, and then I saw you respond. Great.
Yeah. and then I messaged you 2 days later. I'm like, you're a terrible influence. And I posted a picture. I went to the store and grabbed it too. I was like, okay, don't buy. I told you at that time, I'm like, don't buy a new processor motherboard because I can't afford it right now. So yeah. So that's the next upgrade though. I'll do that in a few years.
You're going to go AMD?
No. I'll go Intel. I'm the same as you. I've always bought Intel, and
we're about to get beat up on this rewind for that.
I don't care. I'll do what I want. That's I've become brand loyal to a lot of different things. It's funny.
If a brand doesn't do me wrong, I stick with it.
Yeah, exactly. I used to be big on the EVGA for the video cards, but then I had a problem with them and got off them, and now I'm on MSI. I really like MSI as a brand. So yeah. Anyway, moving on. Next question. Chobin said, what would you think about an in-game journal you can keep, whether it's for taking notes or keeping track of hidden unmarked quests, or for role players who like to write things down in character? And he actually linked a post to another forum post where somebody was talking about what other games have done this. And apparently in Asheron's Call, they had the ability, that's quite an old MMO, but you had the ability to write, copy, sell, and trade books and notes as physical items in the world. You could leave them around in game for other players to find. That's a super cool idea. And I think here's the thing, awesome.
Some of the books you might find. Oh my gosh.
I know. Of course, right? Your mind goes to what
instantly
could go
goes
wrong
to
right away, right?
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine? Oh, what's this book? Oh my God.
It's no, don't read it. But I'm I tried to avoid that, and I tried to think of how cool it would be. What would be something cool that you could do? Imagine finding a random player's journal hidden in a corner, of a a cave with a raid boss in it, and it's got their dying sort of handwritten notes, we failed, the raid wiped. Oh, woe is me, sort of thing. That's pretty cool. So It's a cool idea. I wish it's one of those ideas that no other MMOs have maybe picked up on, or maybe they have and we just don't know about it. But Asheron's Call, like I said, it's pretty old. So what do you think that would be, other than the problems, you'd be into that?
Yeah. So the dropping them on the ground and trading them and stuff's crazy. That's why I was like, but it's a crazy good idea. So in WoW, I had an add-on that was Post-it notes. And they were little tabs on the side of your screen. My whole right side of the screen was these tabs. And if I hit them, my Post-it notes would pop out. And I could have notes about each raid boss when we were on there, so I could quickly access it without leaving game. Just the stuff that I kind of wrote down, or knowing certain things I was watching people do so I could talk to them after. I loved it. It was not a popular add-on. It was just something I found, and I'm like, It was like little sticky notes, and you pop it out, and then you hit a button, it goes back into the side of your screen. But I had like every raid tier, I had like tons of notes on the side, and then I'd pull them out for after meetings. Or I loved it.
Cool. Yeah. Somebody should do that again. Okay, next question is John Wayne. He says, do you feel there should be healing aggro in Pantheon? And how do you think or feel that could benefit a tank class like Paladin or the Dire Lord if they're truly healing from damage done versus the warrior who's most likely going to have no healing abilities? This is a really good point about the Dire Lord here. Actually, you go first. I went first on the last one, so I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I think that direct healing should have a more potent threat gain than some kind of like passive healing or in addition to healing. So Dire Lord is very passive and in addition to where you're hitting him with attack and leeching, I guess is the best way. I don't think leeching health should be as in depth as like direct healing, like a healer, for example. I think that a healer who's pumping out heals should gain a lot of threat, and it should be up to the tank to keep their threat level ahead of them with their tanking abilities. And I think that I don't have any problem with a paladin. If a paladin has passive healing or abilities that heal, where you gain a percentage of it, I think that they shouldn't affect it as much. But yeah, they should. But I think like a direct cast heal should be the one that generates the most threat.
Yeah, it would really be almost impossible to get something off a Dire Lord if their healing generated the kind of aggro that dedicated healer generates. You know what I mean? Like that would be a way big advantage for the Dire Lord as a tank. Although maybe a disadvantage as well, because they're not the sturdiest of the tanks, right? They're not, I mean, in terms of magic they are, but not in terms of physical damage, melee damage. So if they were generating aggro through their own self-healing, that would be kind of interesting, you know.
For mobs around them, not just the one they're tanking too.
Yeah, you know, the way that other healing generates it. So it's kind of an interesting strategic decision to make. Next question is from Gulo Gulo. He says, "What's the progeny system mean to you, and how would you like it to work?" So I've said all along, I'm a big fan of the progeny system, the way they've described it, because to me it means longevity and it means long-term progression in an MMO. You know, we can describe what we always talk about max level. You know, well, what does max level mean when you've got a system like a progeny system where, you know, you retire your max level character? What's the benefit you get from starting a new character? You know, obviously the question when we always talk about this when progeny comes up, we need more information. We don't know what the benefits are, and that's going to be key, obviously. But it has a significant benefit. It has to be a significant benefit for progeny to be legit. You know, you don't want somebody making a level 1 character, something that makes somebody want to make a level one character and begin the journey anew, knowing that they could be more powerful over time with their max level character has to be something worthwhile. So, but I do feel like this is really, I have high hopes for the progeny system. And I think you're on the same page, right?
Yes. You know, I don't know where I stand on this. Sorry, 187. So here's my thing. I like it, right? We were talking about stats earlier. So if 5 stamina is a huge deal and you can start over and have 2 or 3 extra stat points when you create your character each time you do progeny, that's freaking awesome. At the same time, like you have to be able to get to not just max level, but possibly go through some kind of long quest line to get to progeny. That's how I would like it to work. And then I'm okay with somebody going through progeny 10 times and having this crazy strong character, because not everybody's going to be able to do that. And that's a time investment and it's worth it to that person. That's fine. Now, what I don't like is this. If I'm minus and I'm a rogue and I get minus to level 50 and I do the quest and I have to retire or delete minus to make new minus, I don't know how I feel about that.
I think it's about what the incentive is to do that. You know, like what do you get out of it?
Yeah, it's
better be powerful.
Yeah, it's you like, and I know so many people are like, oh, well, I don't want progeny to make somebody really stronger than me. Well, guess what? Too bad. Like, it's a huge sacrifice. It's a huge time sink. Starting over, like if I'm gonna start over, I want it to be a big deal. Like if I'm on minus the 5th. I better be one of the strongest rogues ever. You know, like I should have base stat points that like people just starting in the game like, wow, that character's a beast.
Exactly.
Like, that's what I would want Progeny to be. And my only fear is in a lot of these style of games, developers are really scared of giving somebody that power and making them stronger. And you know what, they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Okay. So let's wrap it up. We've gone a little long, but we have one more question. It's a good one. It's from Tech Ninja, our buddy. He says, is pug a dirty word? I'll let you go first.
No, it's pickup group. That's what it means for anyone who just knows it as pug. No,
yeah, we're not talking about the dog pugs. We're talking about pugs.
Pickup group. No, I met Poiru from doing a pickup pugs for our raid because we were short a couple people, and he was on a different server in WoW, and we picked him up, and then he did really well, and we were chatting, and from the other server he would pug into our raids just because we liked him, and then he ends up server transferring, and now he's my partner in Pantheon.Plus, and he's one of my best friends in the world, and that's through a pug. I think that 90% of the time when you meet somebody who's not a guildie, you meet them through a pug. So no, it's not a dirty word. There's a lot of bad eggs in pugs. I think the biggest problem with pugs is like, if you join a pug, you need to know what the leader's intent is. And if that intent lines with yours, you're fine. But if you join some group that's a min-maxing group and you don't want to min-max and you don't want to play the role they want you to play, well, guess what? You need to go find another group. That's your fault. That's not the pug leader's fault. Every single person who plays an MMORPG has the right to make their own group. So if you can make your own group, then, make your own pug, and then it'll be positive. So.
Yeah. If pug's a dirty word, man, I'm going to be the most foul-mouthed sailor in the game. Because I'm gonna be running around saying it a lot. I'm gonna be shouting from the rooftops. Like the value of pugs is the social experience, and we just of course, in comparison to a guild or a static group, a pug's gonna be more challenging without a doubt. It's just the way it is. But we have to go. What we go into the pug expecting is really on us. And sometimes you are going to have a negative experience, but you have to be open to the idea, and you have to also not expect to be ultra efficient. It's not going to be that. It's about the social experience. It's about involving other people who may be less or more than what you want or what you expect. And that's fine, because you're putting that aside. You're putting that gameplay aspect aside necessarily just to have a social experience, right? What if you meet somebody you've met who makes you laugh like you've never laughed before? What if you meet somebody with a similar background in real life and that takes over what you're doing in game, right?
What if you meet your significant other?
Yeah, that's exactly my next point. I was going to say, what if you meet someone, you have a spark, and you form a lasting relationship? That's what pugs are about. Pugs are like a microcosm of what the MMO experience is or should be, and it's really high time we stop thinking of them as something to be ashamed of, something people, or for lesser people. That sucks. So yeah, no, pug's a dirty word, man. Then F you. That's what I'll say.
Jeez. I love it. That's so good. Theric is now a dirty old man. Well, everybody, thank you for checking out this episode of The Rewind. We went about 10 minutes over our normal time. Not too shabby. Could have been worse.
That's fine.
Maybe a little more than that. But thanks, everybody, for listening. And as always, you can expect to hear from us next week. Thank you, and have a good day.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon.Plus related content on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube under the name Pantheon.Plus. Also, be sure to follow Theric at PantheonTheric on Twitter. Keep up to date on all Pantheon Rise of the Fallen information on www.Pantheon.Plus, the definitive source for all media of Pantheon. Until next time.